Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Amy Landau. I'm the Director of Education and Interpretation here at the Fowler Museum. The Fowler at UCLA acknowledges our presence on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Gabrielino Tongva peoples. Today's conversation focuses on two current exhibitions that highlight the lived experience of Jain religious practices and ethical principles. One is Visualizing Devotion, Jain Embroidered Shrine Hangings at the Fowler in Los Angeles, and two, Being Jain, Art and Culture of an Indian Religion at Museum Rietberg in Zurich. Visualizing Devotion has now been extended to April 16th, and Being Jain is open till April 30th. Today's program is part of the Fowler initiative, Engaging Live Religion in the 21st Century Museum, which has been generously supported by the Lilly Endowment Incorporated. This initiative has three centers of activity: exhibitions, public programming, and digital learning. Public programs and digital learning are under the rubric Vital Matters. Vital Matters represents different perspectives on the intersections of materiality and devotional practices and brings together scholarship produced in universities and museums with the knowledge embedded in the practice of community organizers, artists, and spiritually braced leaders. This educational programming is predicated on the belief that these combined perspectives shed light on the vital matters of today, such as community, justice, education, and the environment. We'll begin with two short presentations on Visualizing Devotion and Being Jain. Both projects are characterized by exhibition interpretation based on the views of multiple individuals, both in and outside the museum. And both projects focus on practice and people over dates and doctrines. They are also inspired collaborations and friendships that infuse their associated programs and content that will last well beyond the exhibition dates. First, we'll hear from Lynna Dhanani, Assistant Professor in the Department of Religious Studies at UC Davis, and Patrick A. Polk, the Fowler's Senior Curator of Latin American and Caribbean Popular Arts. Following this, Deputy Director of the Museum Rietberg and Exhibition Curator Johannes Beltz, along with co-founder of the Arihanta Institute, Christopher Jain Miller, will discuss the exhibition Being Jain. After these short presentations, we'll have a conversation about the planning, implementation, and reception of these projects, as well as a Q&A session. Before we begin, a few technical notes. Once the screen sharing begins, I encourage you to click View Options and then go to side-by-side mode, so the video feed doesn't cover any of the presentation. And if you have any questions, and we do encourage questions during the program, please submit them through the Q&A function found at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You could submit and upvote entries that you would like to be answered. Now, I ask Lynna and Patrick to turn on your videos, and over to you.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you. And again, it's wonderful to be here and to have so many people zooming in to join us. And again, just to follow up a little bit of how Amy's wonderful introduction to this program and the background to it, I wanted to emphasize again that this is made possible by funding from the Lilly Endowment, which has graciously and wonderfully given us the opportunity to, as a museum, to expand our engagement with local communities as well as global communities for the express purpose of looking at and engaging with religion as it's lived, as spiritual traditions, theologies are enacted, understood in daily life. And within that, with an emphasis on material behavior, which was, again, why as a museum, we're so excited by what we've been able to do. And the Visualizing Devotion exhibition, I think, is a wonderful example of that we were able to work with members of the local Jain community, and as well as world-class scholars here like Lynna and Stephen Vos and others. So I don't want to take too much of the time here sort of introducing this, because I think the presentation that Lynna is going to take us through here wonderfully shows what we've done, but and certainly trying to work with a wide body of knowledgeable folks for whom Jain is their faith, is their academic passion, and so on. So again, with that, Professor Lynna Dhanani.
Thank you, Patrick. It's been such an honor and pleasure to be part of this exhibition. And as this slide shows, there are, and as Patrick has said, many people involved in bringing this together. And I wanted to take a moment to just recognize the people who've been central to this exhibition. I believe early on it was Dr. Jaya Shah and his family, and you can see to the right the Chod Pata, the meaning of which I will explain in a second, the Chod Pata that he had donated for the exhibition. And the other members of the Jain Center of Southern California. It's been a pleasure to work with Amy, Siona, Patrick, Steve, and to see beyond what is displayed at the Fowler, the extent of the Lynn collection. So I hope in the future there will be programming where all of us can see more of this wonderful collection. So really, I would like to give you an overview of the significance of these Chod Patas, and encourage you to go and see the exhibition if you're in LA, or to go to LA to see the exhibition. I believe it will be ending on April 16th. So I really do hope you get a chance to see it. There's an issue of what the meaning of chod is. We sort of have a sense of what it means, but there are different meanings, different etymologies. So the most common that are explained is that chod comes from the Gujarati word chod, which means a plant, tree, small bush. Another explanation you hear is that it comes from chaud in Gujarati, 14, meaning 14, or even potyu. And potyu is another name for a textile that was hanging, something that is behind. There are other explanations, verbal connotations, such as to leave, to give up, chodvu in Gujarati, chorna in Hindi, chorda in Prakrit, or also the opening of a knot or something that's thrown behind an object from above, such as a drapery, chortayati in Jaina Sanskrit. But the three that I've listed here are some of the more common ones that are circulated. And in fact, if you speak to any of the chod makers in Surat today in northwestern Gujarat, these are in fact the definitions they give. So what are chods? They have many uses. They're commonly used by the Shvetambara Murti Pujak Jains, a sect of Jainism, also understood as the icon worshipping Jains. They are made primarily on velvet. And it's interesting because the study of these chods really gets you into the use of textiles and the trade of textiles from the 17th to the 19th century. And one sees these velvet textiles used on Mughal thrones and clothes. So it's very much a part of this period of trade of different components that have entered India and that left India. And then we have these chod pattas that have woven golden and silver thread. And they use also sequins and other elements. In one of our oldest pattas in the collection, that's in the exhibition, we see the use of beetle wings. So the use of different elements changes over time, as I've mentioned here in the fourth point, that today in some of the chod pattas, these gold and silver threads are replaced by copper and plastic wires. And the color designs have changed considerably as well. They also implement this zari technique, this metallic embroidery that comes from Iran in the 17th century. And often, as you will see with the examples I'm about to show, it gives information about the date of the making of the chod, the promoters, the lay sponsors, etc. Again, the making of chod really takes off in the early 17th century, or late, I would actually say late 17th century. It's debatable. I think there needs to be more of a conversation on the dating of some of these chods. But in any case, it continues on today. So there are still chod makers in Northwest India who are creating pieces for the lay community and ascetic community. So I'm really grateful for Nalini Balbier's Une forme d'art religieux jeune d'aujourd'hui, excuse my French, where she has actually gone to Surat and spent time with some of these chod makers, and quotes from an Indian historian, and quotes a Jain monk who is describing these chods as a small hanging draped beyond a Jain Suri, a monk, when he delivers a sermon. The Suri sits on a woolen floor spread. Behind him hang one or more putiyas. Over him, a small chandarva canopy with a torana, which drapes in front of the canopy. So typically, traditionally, this chod pata was accompanied by a canopy and the torana. So here you have, I'm hoping that you can see my arrow, this chod here and this canopy and the torana up in front. And in fact, we have replicated that in our exhibition using the pata that Dr. Jaya Shah had given. And so to the right, you see the canopy and you see the toran, and you see a small shrine. And if you do end up going, you will enter the exhibition and see these chods hanging on the left. And they're lit up and they just dazzle. They dazzle you and they're dazzling in this light. So I really do encourage you to see it. Today, chod pattas are primarily made in Surat. This is Northwest India in the state of Gujarat, in southern Gujarat here. But these pattas, and we don't have time to get into this, are typically made by over 20 artists. One piece requires 20 some artists to work on it. Who the artists were, when the changes came about, is another story. But today, because, for example, Muslim artists were in charge of the zari work, you will now find chods being made in Benares and UP. And some of the Muslim artists who were originally working on these chods in Surat had left and have moved to these locations, and other Indian artists have taken over that work, and female artists as well. So what are the uses of these chods? I mentioned it briefly, that it can serve as a backdrop to a teaching mendicant. It can also serve as a backdrop to icons and temples. Often, as we will see, it commemorates the conclusion of ritual fasting, meditation, and devotion. Upadan is a name given to this ritual fasting collectively. It celebrates the promotion of a monk within the religious hierarchy. It can commemorate a deceased member of the family. It can even replace icons, which is very interesting. And we've heard some stories of this with the Jain community in America, where they didn't have a shrine built, but they did have a chod pata hanging in place of an icon. Some of the pattas, as you will see, show interactions between the mendicants and householders, and they promote certain teachings and ritual practices. And of course, they recall and educate the viewer on Jain religious themes, sacred symbols, stories, places, and almost in a kind of total way. And I have put lastly decoration. This is something that I think we need to think about more, the decorative aspect of these chod pattas, which might actually help us understand some of the older pattas that don't have images on them. So to take you through the exhibit quickly, and Amy, how many minutes do I have left?
You have a few minutes. Great to go through the sections of the exhibition.
Great. So to quickly show you what we've done here, Patrick and Dr. J.S. Shah and others had picked a number of pieces from the Lynn collection before they had contacted me. And when I did become involved in the collection and in the exhibition, Patrick kindly offered for me to go through all of the 100 pieces in the link collection and pick the ones that I wanted to be shown. And so using the ones that they had picked and the ones that I saw with my niece, we went through it for 8 hours, all 100 pieces. We put together what I wanted as an array of different types of chodes, different themes. There are several chodes in the collection that were very beautiful, but unfortunately it was impossible to show all of them within the small space of the museum. So we picked a diverse range of chodes, and from that, I categorized them in the following ways. So when you enter the exhibit on the left, you come across knowledge and scripture. And here, this particular chode marks the completion of a fast of knowledge, Jnana Panchami, in which scriptures and learned works are honored. And the chode pata at the top here in this diamond-like image inside of a sun-like image, shows the 5 knowledges that are the innate qualities of our soul. And here we see Jnana, Kevala Jnana, of course, in the center, which is the most important, which beckons and represents the destruction of all karma and the liberation of a sentient being. And we have other types of knowledges mentioned, clairvoyance and mind reading. Another image you'll see is the Agama Purush. And the center image is of the first Jinnah, enlightened figure of the Jain tradition, Rishabhanatha, showing the totality of knowledge as represented by the 45 sacred texts of the icon worshipping Shvetambara Jains. And at the important agamas are listed at the top. These are the primary texts, the limbs of the canon. And subsidiary texts, the Upangas, are listed below. And we have another set of texts called the Prakirnikas that are around this lotus. And so these are 2 examples of the types of chodes we have that are very much focused on knowledge, the obtaining of knowledge, and the commemorate and the sort of visual eulogy of sacred scripture. And as you continue in the exhibition, we get to our next category of chodes under the auspicious life, events, and symbols. And this is one of my favorite ones. This shows the 24th Jinnah's mother, Trishala, dreaming 14 symbolic dreams that herald the coming of a great and holy man, the Jinnah, her son. And many of these images are found in framing many of the chodes in the exhibit. So for example, you see an elephant here that means someone of an exceptionally high character. You also see a bull, which symbolizes spiritual teaching and religion building. And you also see the goddess Lakshmi, who is the benefactor of wealth and prosperity and who gives it. So all of these symbols have various meanings within the tradition. But what's lovely here is that there's a sense of someone actually dreaming. So you have an example of a very creative and artistic piece that is sort of enacting this feeling of dreaming, this dreaminess. For some reason, my arrow is, there you go, with this gold and silver thread that's coming from the mother of the Jinnah. So it's a wonderful piece, and it's even more wonderful to see it in person. The next piece, and I think I'm running out of time, so I'm not going to go into the details of this, but this is the 23rd Jinnah Parshvanatha. Many of these pieces that I've shown are were created in the mid-20th century. The first piece from 1960s. I believe this piece is around the same time. And so we have a really wonderful image of a clothed Jinnah, which is quite exceptional, and his attendants. And you can go to the exhibition and read more about it. The 4th section is designated a sacred landscape and pilgrimage. And here we have a landscape of Shatrunjaya and another picture of the mythical or, unlocatable sacred place, Ashtapada. And many of these images replicate images in painting and also in sculpture. And so Shatrunjaya is located in Gujarat, and it is part of the town of Palitana, and several of the most important saints and jinnas have obtained nirvana on this mountain. And it is a wonderful, just unending scene of temples and commemorative shrines. So this is something that is helping the lay community to recall these sacred places that they've either made pilgrimage to or want to make pilgrimage to, or have ritually worshipped in their own temples. Often in temples, you will have the main shrine of a jinnah, but you also have these replications of sacred pilgrimages, sacred places that they worship. And finally, the last part is our inspiring stories. And this one is the famous story of Madhu Bindu. And this chodpata was gifted to a temple marking the completion of a 9-day fast. It illustrates an allegorical tale of a traveler lost in a strange land, his plight reflecting the dilemma that we all face in samsara. And so here he's chased by the elephant that symbolizes death. He himself is a symbolic of the worldly soul hanging, grasping on precariously, trying to grab at and eat those beads of honey, those momentary sensual pleasures that come and go. And all the meanwhile, this elephant is shaking the tree. Angry bees are biting, which symbolize daily problems. The two rats, and there they are, I guess. They're chewing away, symbolizing the human lifespan. And he is about to fall to his death. And so this symbolizes sort of our state and samsara, and is a reminder to all of us and to the Jain community of our predicament and what we are trying to move beyond. So that is our exhibition in a nutshell. I'll stop sharing my screen here.
Oh, thank you, Lena. And again, just to make a couple of quick comments also, the Lind collection has so many amazing works that first, I mean, just to try to pick a set for this exhibition was quite a task. And then again, as Lena has shown, each of them is a well of deep, deep meaning, so much to unpack. So I encourage folks to come into the museum if you have a chance. And also the glitter, the sparkle in that room. It is stupendous. It is amazing to walk into that room. So again, Lena, thank you for selecting these objects, helping us work with the community and really unpacking that meaning. So now we're going to shift over to Johannes Beltz, who will tell us about their amazing exhibition as well.
So, good evening. Can you hear me well? All good? Yeah. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to present you or give you some insights into an exhibition which we are doing almost at the same time on Jainism in Zurich. And let me just say a word about our museum, which is where I'm working, which is the Museum Rietberg. And just trying to give you, to give you an image of, we are a museum of non-European art, and we are owned by the municipality of Zurich. And so we do 2 to 3 major exhibitions per year. And the show which is on now, we call it Being Jain, and it's an exhibition about Jainism and Jain art, of course. I would like to mention before I present you the outline of this exhibition, I would like to thank to the Parazia Foundation and Switzerland, which is the major donor of this event. And I would like to thank our partners and collaborators at the Center for Religious Studies at the Bochum University, Patrick Krüger in particular, and the Arihanta Academy. And you will hear about this collaboration in a moment from Chris Miller. Let me take you through the exhibition, sorry, let me start quickly. The images I share here, they're all on our website, so you can take your time after and read there all the documentation which you will see. You find it online. So the exhibition is called Being Jain, and what we do here is we present Jain art objects from our collection, which goes back to the 1952 when our museum was created, and we then received a lot of collections and donations and acquired, etc. So the Museum Rietberg has a substantial collection of Jain art, and we lended 20 important artworks from India. So we present these historic art objects, sculptures, paintings, bronzes in this exhibition, and we give their historic context. We explain about the roots and the history of Jainism, but we try to achieve something more than just presenting the art objects. We want to take a step further and talk about Jainism in India today and how it is practiced in Switzerland, or in the US, so by the diaspora, second level. And the third level is we want to go beyond these objects and ask for what they're standing for, and what is their meaning, what do they transport, what do they reveal, what is what are the ethics behind Jainism. And we think that this is, in particular for this exhibition, very important to talk about the Jain ethics and the principles of Jainism, and to share them with our audience and make them accessible. So you see here in the first slide, you see the entrance hall, which is a kind of immersive space which takes you into the exhibition with images of pilgrimage sites, rituals, and you have these two magnificent and great, beautiful Tirthankaras from the Rietberg collection. And we structured the exhibition into 6 chapters. We start with the section on knowledge, then we speak about asceticism, renunciation. We talk about the community, the importance of the community, and how Jainism is practiced by the community. And then we talk about the society and the universe. So there's a logical order, a red thread storyline which takes you through the exhibition. We do not differentiate between the different Jain sects, Shwetambar, Digambar. It's a synthesis of many different traditions, and it highlights the diversity of Jain art, religion, and practices. We try to with large blown up images which are taken from 5 movies which we were doing for the exhibition and shooting in India. We try to bring a contemporary context into the show, and we put together contemporary society, India today, practicing Jains, and ancient objects. So on the center here, you see a beautiful sculpture from showing 4 Tirthankaras, which is one of the masterpieces and highlights in the exhibition. It's on a loan from an Indian museum. In the center of this presentation today is a game, and I'm going to talk about that in a few seconds to give you more, to tell you more about it, because I think this is crucial and important, super important to understand why this exhibition is different from other exhibitions we have been doing, and I think so interesting. So keep it in mind, that's a snake and ladder game. I am going to talk about it in a few seconds. there's some majestic shrines, early Jain art, you know, some going back to the first century. So we covered different materials, time periods, devotional objects, bronzes. And you see it's the design, it's very beautifully designed. It's really, we try to give space to these objects. And you see a butter, you see here a painting which, you know, textile, which we just spoke about. We have one in our collection as well. So good. So you see a little bit of how, you know, the exhibition looks, and let me know. And we have a space where you can see some documentaries. And we have, as I said, we have this space where we have laid out the snake and ladders game, and we make our audience to play it. And the trick here is it's not the original snake and ladder games where you move on and you go to the fastest way you can go and to the goal. Here the game, that there's a twist. It's a game which you play with other people, and you have to ask questions. You're getting questions to answer, and you have to guess how your co-players answer these questions. And these questions are related to ethics in a very general way. They're related to questions of our daily life, how we consume, how we spend our money, how we use energy, what kind of clothes and we buy, what do we think about sustainability. So these questions are day-to-day based. They are not about philosophical concepts, but they're really relevant to our nutrition, and the core question is how the core questions are nonviolence and how we treat other people, ethics. So let me just play this little animation while I talk. All right, do you shower more than 10 minutes? You have to guess whether your co-players do that or not, and whether you think you guess right and you are really right, you can move on. Otherwise you fail and have to go back. So the rules are the same, right? There is the snake which bites you and takes you down, and there's a ladder which you can take and brings you up. So sorry, I need to I can't move this. So okay. What is important is that these questions, we started with 100 of them, and then this game invites you to ask your own questions, upload them. There's an app, right, which you can use in the exhibition when you play it, and you upload your own questions so that other people play and have to answer to your question. So you see that there's something which a game which evolves and changes over time. And then, we started with 100 questions, we have a few hundred now, and after a while there will be much more. And we have two levels. We have the level for adults and the children level, and of course the questions differ significantly. Do you recycle tin cans? Do you love animals? So there are different kind of questions which are part of this game. I think that it's important to struggle a little bit with my screen here. So maybe it's the moment to that I ask Chris Miller to comment and talk about this exhibition as well, because he has been a partner right from the beginning of this exhibition, and the the concept, and in doing interviews with Jain peoples, because what practicing Jains in Switzerland and across the world, because what was so important is that we do this exhibition with Jains, with the participation of Jains from the US to India. Christopher, would you like to take over?
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Johannes, for showing us the exhibition. So one of the things that really excites me about this exhibition, and I was lucky to kind of have my hand in both in various ways, but particularly is the way that they engage with the Jain community and bring the Jain community in a collaborative way to allow them to talk about Jain values in light of the art, in light of the things that are appearing in front of people, the objects and what they mean, what values they bring out, as you saw with Lena, who gave the talk about all the different symbols and what they mean. Part of this project, and I was really excited back, I would say 2 or 3 years ago, when Narendra Parson, who I know is in the audience, introduced me to Johannes. And when we met, Johannes said, hey, what do you think about doing an interview project with Jains from around the world to talk about how they bring Jain values into their everyday life? How do they live their Jain tradition all around the world? And being trained as an ethnographer, I thought this is a fantastic idea. And so Arihanta Academy, we signed an MOU with Museum Rietberg, and we put together this wonderful project that's online, fully accessible at the link that you see down here. And I'll ask that Fowler can share it in the chat as well. But what we did is we went around and we interviewed these Jains who you see pictured here on the wall in 7 different interviews online. They're all on our website, and they're also available. You can see them at the exhibition itself. Here's an image from our website of the various individuals that we interviewed to ask them questions about how they live their Jain life in daily society. What I'm going to do right now is just briefly walk you through each of these, and then if there's one that you like, you can go to our website and watch various aspects of the interview. The first person we interviewed, one of the first people we interviewed, was Dr. Parveen Jain, who you see here below me, who happens to be the CEO and president of Arihanta Academy, but also before that was an entrepreneur, was the CEO of many companies, was the founder of many companies, many startups. And he really talks to us about, as you can see here, he really talks to us about how he brought his Jain values into the world of startups. How do you manage companies and people according to Jain values? What kind of work do you do? And why do you do the kind of work that you do according to Jain values? So that's what Parveen gave to us. We also interviewed someone in Switzerland, my friend Danesh Kotari, who you see here, who's the founder of Pi to Life. Danesh lives in Lausanne, and after a very successful career in the Swiss banking world, left to try to found a company that, or set of companies that would really make a positive impact on people's lives and on the world. And that's his company Pi to Life that he talks about in his interview, and how he's connecting consumers and companies with sustainable products and food and things like this that are better for people, better for their health, better for the environment, and so forth. We also interviewed Nisha Mehta from the Jain Vegan Initiative and from the Ahimsa Eco-Vegan Committee at Jaina in North America. Nisha has a really interesting interview about living a family life, she's a mother, as well as a professional life as a writer for TV shows, and how Jain values can be brought in to this world. And as we saw as we went through these interviews, sometimes it's difficult. This isn't, we're not just painting a pretty picture. People run into difficult situations when they try to bring the message of nonviolence into a workplace, no matter where they are in the world. This was especially the case with Sanjay Gubi, who you see here, who is a wildlife biologist, conservationist, and author from Bangalore, India. There's a really interesting story that Sanjay tells us about a time when they had to decide whether or not they were going to put down a wild animal that was threatening people in South India. As a Jain, of course, you don't want to do that. But then if there's people's lives at risk, maybe you do. So you can go watch that interview and see what Sanjay, the decision Sanjay ended up having to make. Next, there's Samani Chaitanya Pragya, who's a professor, a visiting professor at Florida International University, who came from India to the United States and tells us how she still maintains her Jain commitment and vows as a nun in the Jain community to live a life of nonviolence and compassion, to transform her students, as she tells us about many of her students having transformative experiences of maybe becoming vegetarian or vegan as a result of taking her course. We also had Manoj and Anupama Jain from Cologne, Germany. So here we are back in Europe, who have a company called Vepura, Veggie Your Life. They make vegetarian and vegan food for people in Germany. And so they're making successful business. They're able to do that, and they're also able to do it by serving nonviolent food. And then finally, a bit of an outlier here, we had Dr. Shailin Jain, who is, of course, a renowned distinguished professor of history at the University of Delhi. So Dr. Shailin Jain actually tells us about what it's like to be a Jain and a Jain scholar, because when you're a scholar living in the community, a lot of frictions can come up between what you study, what you know, and then living in that community itself. So we got to experience some of those frictions in that particular interview. A couple other things that we did is that we did an online video project with my university students. So for example, my student Agna Patel, who you see pictured here, is actually a Jain, was in my class, and we did a video for each student where they took a piece of Jain art from the actual exhibition and explained how it expressed Jain values. So you see here a monk preaching in the park, and you can go on Museum Rietberg's YouTube channel and watch this video where my students explain what these paintings mean to them based on all the Jain studies they did with me in the classroom. I also was able to give a guest lecture at University of Zurich class for Johannes Beltz at Museum Rietberg, where his students were also working on video projects about the objects in the museum itself. And last but not least, we also produced a course called Jain Responses to Climate Change. This course is free. If anybody wants to take it, you can go to our website and enroll now. And it will be free for the duration of the exhibition. And if you enroll now, it'll be free forever. So there we give Jain responses to climate change, some of the basic ways, some of the things that Johannes was talking about in the game that he mentioned. How can I live a less violent lifestyle? What are the various ways? So we go through what a Jain response might be to how we can reduce our climate footprint and live a better life and still thrive and still make a good living. So that brings me to the end of our online collaboration that we did between Museum Rietberg and Arihanta Academy. And I hope you'll visit both of our websites and take a look at all of the wonderful online resources we have for those of you around the world who may not be able to make it to Zurich. So thank you so much for listening, Jai Janendra, and I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you. Might I add to something to what you said? And I cordially, we would like to invite you to come and see our exhibition. As you said, come and see the other Jain show. I mean, I know that Zurich is far away, but we have a lot of online material to offer, and we could talk about it in a second. One thought I would just maybe for the discussion I would like to add is this exhibition is we are not going to, we don't want to convert people to Jainism, right? It's not a religious teaching. It's not something which is imposing a morality. Or what we try to do in this exhibition is to talk about these issues and to address them and to discuss them. And the game is an invitation to discuss it, to discuss these questions, to define ideas and controversially discuss them. at the same time, as you said, the interviews highlight many contradictions in our daily lives where we don't have easy answers, and everyone faces these challenges and contradictions. So I'm really grateful. Thank you for Christopher for this wonderful collaboration. Thank you.
And thank you all. This has been wonderful to hear about these two exhibitions happening at the same time on different continents. And I want to go back to the title for a moment about curatorial collectives. And before I do so, Lena, would you like to turn on your screen? Fantastic. And thank you for jumping into this program. So in terms of curatorial collectives, often in museums, it is the case where you have the labels in third-person anonymous voice, and it is a vision of one individual. Both these exhibitions and other exhibitions we have seen recently focus on curatorial collectives doing the work, a group of individuals, both inside the museum and outside the museum. So I'm putting it out to first Patrick to maybe discuss a bit about how collaborations were formed at the Fowler for this exhibition.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Amy. And I'll talk a little bit, then I'll turn it over to Lena, and so we can talk about that broader collective. I think, you know, for us and for me as a curator at the Fowler Museum, and what was so wonderful about the opportunity given to us by the Lilly Endowment funding, and then by the Linns and having this collection of Chodpatas, is that we were able to then sort of go to the community. And so we worked very closely with leadership and members of the Jain Center of Southern California, with the goal particularly of better understanding the lives of the objects and how people live with those objects. And so it was just a wonderful to be able to go to places of worship, both institutional and public, like the Jain Center, and participate in ceremonies when Chodpata would be brought out for recognizing fasts and other kinds of vows. But even for me in particular, what was wonderful by reaching out in a partnership with community was then the literal doors that opens, which was to really fully understand the ways in which Chodpatas are used in Southern California within the Jain community, particularly at people's homes, for in-home shrines, whether that's, you know, in the place of a statue of a Tirthankar, or if it, you know, it's about mobility, but also it was wonderful just to see how people live with these objects and to help us understand at a more familial, emotional, transnational kinds of level. And then the other side, again, for me, certainly, and I think us, the Fowler as an institution, is the opportunity then to build other kinds of bridges and to build academic bridges. And so it was amazing to be able to bring Lena and others in. And so maybe Lena, if you want to talk a little bit of sort of those steps we took in bringing the exhibition to life.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. Yeah, it was really this eye-opening process. And it went from almost treating the Chodpatas as texts to be read and deciphered, to understanding the central role in the lives of Jains and how and the kind of complex role that they exist in. So, you know, we had that initial, what is this exhibit? What's going to be part of the exhibit? And just seeing the vastness of Chods, really the diversity of Chodpatas, and being overwhelmed by this material form that I knew so little about, and that seems to be everywhere, but no one seems to be able to pinpoint what they are or what they do. So that was really a fun way of entering into this. Of course, I mentioned picking the Chods, and my one person who's missing is my niece, who sat with me for 8 hours. Her mother was just surprised that she could sit still for that long. But then there was also coming to the Fowler and seeing them in person. And so that was another step, was really working with you, Patrick and Sonia and others. And the impact of seeing them in person was so different from seeing a photo. And it did different things to me. And all of a sudden, this world of sort of real lived experience with an object, what it conveyed, what that meant, opened up another whole avenue of inquiry. And when I came back and finally got to meet the community, when I gave the opening talk at the Fowler in December, and I saw everyone's reactions to it, and it ranged from, yes, these are a part of our lives. We've had these in our families for X amount of time. Others who've had them, but they didn't seem as important, or they were tucked away somewhere. But this reevaluation of sort of the material culture of religion, what that means, the ideas that it transports for an immigrant community who's away from a lot of the places that these chotpatas denote. Not only the places, but the monks and communities. So it became very clear to me how important these material objects are to immigrant communities and traveling communities, and how it connects them emotionally, spiritually to places in India. And so, really it was watching these reactions. I think I've mentioned it in one of the pieces I wrote. These chotpatas, it have existed, and we've had one in our shrine. This is an example of one conversation I had. If it were to, we haven't paid much attention to it, would someone come in and say something, or someone would take it away, we would then miss it, So it just seems like what our liminal spaces are now being put front, right, and center for all of us, Jains, academics, curators, to think about more concretely.
And so the Fowler exhibition, the checklist was also created in conversation, not just the curator making a decision about what to present in the exhibition, but a communal decision.
Yes, it was a communal decision, exactly.
Right. And that's also true of the educational resources being built alongside that. We were fortunate enough to be able to work with K through 12 teachers from the Pathshala at the Jain Center for Southern California with that. And Christopher and Johannes, also for your public programming, how were multiple voices brought into that?
Let me say that this project has been collaborative on many levels. We are a curatorial team of 5 people. It's not, this is already significant. It's not one curator. It's 5, and every text you read, every line went through 5 hands. So this is already, I think, a signal. And there we are academics, we are filmmakers, Indian, European, American, so cross nation, cross cultures. We had a very supportive board of advisors consisting of academics, Jain, practicing, non-practicing, different type of people who supported us throughout the entire project. We worked with the community of Jains in Switzerland right from the beginning, even earlier, because this is an old project which we would like to do some years ago. And we worked with the Jains in India, and we were shooting films there. We had through Chris contact to students in the US. We were talking to students in Zurich. So the outreach and the collaboration is so many layered and complex, and even within our own institution, where we work with art educators, designers, and we talk about inclusion, and there are so many players in this project. I think it's one of the most interesting, exciting, but also challenging projects I have been working on. And I think you, Chris, can certainly agree with that, yeah?
Absolutely, yeah. And just to add a little bit to what you said, Johannes, I really saw in the bookstore, in the gift shop, I should say, I saw this collaboration kind of symbolically manifest when I picked up the book, and I haven't actually unwrapped it yet because I wanted to show it in a few presentations before I do, but I did look through the copy there. And what I found in there, as well as in other books that were at the exhibition itself, was a kind of a blend of views that are simultaneously academic, very academic, historical, philosophical, and whatnot, as well as perspectives from the Jain community. And what you'll actually find in the book here itself, in English or German, are the interviews, or some of the summaries of the interviews, as I should say. And those interviews themselves, I felt, were so collaborative because we had to reach across multiple continents to find a diverse kind of group of Jains that we could interview, who were all doing different and interesting things, but still trying to some way put their values on the ground wherever they were. And I found the selection process itself that we went through, all the back and forth and trying to find the right people to do that, was really was on the one hand challenging, but on the other hand, I also found it really fulfilling. And as you said, we weren't trying to convert anyone, but we were trying to just give a space for Jain voices to be heard, and then to let people unpack those questions. So I'm glad that you brought that out. So you hear all of this, yeah.
You hear and you see and meet them, because what I would like to mention here is we have every 2 weeks, we have either a tandem tour, which Chris is doing next month, where we have a walk through the exhibition with a curator and some from 1 or 2 people from the Jain community. And we talk about their personal relations and experiences in relation to the objects and the themes we present. And we have once a month, a gallery talk in the exhibition itself, in the game space, where we talk, we put the question, we ask the question, why does it matter? What is in there for me? Why does it matter for me? And we had 5 events of that kind where we spoke, we presented who are the Jains in Switzerland. We spoke about nutrition, food habits, vegetarianism. We speak about consumerism, renunciation. We will speak about violence, non-violence, and the final event will be on death and dying. So it's the meaning of death. So you see that, and these events, you have always 1 or 2 people from the Jain community and other people, and we try to, it's a debate. It's controversial, but it's not political or kind of pro con. It's a very sensitive and respectful and interesting dialogue, I think. I really
acknowledging that expertise lives in many different areas, and it opens it up for that expertise that comes from a lived experience and steady experience. And also it provides an opportunity, and this keeps coming up, to talk about worldviews, not as religion, something in the past that's defined by certain broad historical landscapes, but something that is part of a modern world, an everyday experience. So that's about the opportunities to take on a lived religion lens in exhibition. So you focus on practice and people and the human aspects of it, rather than these broad historical overviews, which is really interesting. I think both projects bring that out. Johannes?
May I? We start with the objects. I think this is super important. It's not a random, it all has to do with our collection. It's just another way of approaching these objects. It's, taking an object and contextualizing in its historic context and decipher and decode it, and read the painting and explain what's there, but then, add more levels of interpretation and take it to our communities today and to our lives. But I think it's not just about people and worldviews, it's about these objects as well. So I think there's a triad. There is the objects. There are the objects, and there are meanings and interpretations, and there's our contemporary world.
I think that's really important. And I would say, I think that sort of for our exhibition is focusing on a set of objects from a collection. But I think certainly in our programming, one thing we've really done is, okay, well, how do you take the next step with the meaning of objects? for practice. And I think the ways in which we understand ideas of, say, selfless service or environmental concerns of sort of oneness with ecology. And I think that's where we, particularly on our programming, is our audience and public engagement. We've tried to bring sort of the ideas behind objects, that are enmeshed in textile and decorative elements, to actually say, okay, this is where these lead you, right? And I think that's it. You think we manage that, Lena, in what we've done?
I mean, I feel like we have just started this journey. I'm really impressed, Johannes and Chris, with what you've done, the community engagement and the different modalities that you've created for that. I think that there's so much to explore with these chotpatas, starting with the object, Johannes, that one is just experiencing being part of the Jain community, their experience of those chotpatas as objects of focus. So we're talking about different objects. So to put that in focus and what that does, the meaning that brings for the community, it's a different set of meanings. I see similarities in these exhibits and differences, and big differences for especially the collection of these patas that travel, right? We have to remember that these were traveling, and they arose from trade and travel, but there's so much potential to use them as tools for teaching Jainism. I think that's something we want to explore. And there's so much room to imagine different forms of community engagement. And I think I'm inspired by what you've done in Zurich. I know that Amy and Patrick have done a lot of programming. The Vital Metals Project, using these objects for education, is another dimension to this. I just think it looks different because, again, the objects are different. But I think there's a lot of room for conversation about, I come back to material culture, but really how this material culture is so important and how we take it for granted. And so that's the value of an exhibit, is putting something front, right, and center. There is that aspect of decoding it, of figuring it out. Some of these patas, it's not easy to figure out what's being conveyed, especially the abstract ones that don't have actual images. Where was it placed? So there is this interesting historical element. And it also brings communities into the history of it. So yeah, there's so much more to explore there.
And what we're talking about here is also different levels of interpretation. So historical, philosophical, the art historical framework, and also the practice and the aspects of the belief and the belonging and the action of it. And so that really pushes museums to think about, one, how to not separate programs from exhibitions or public programs and K through 12 activities from like actually what's being put on the walls. So in terms of what is actually in the exhibition in Rietberg, so there's the oral histories, correct? Are those available both online and in the exhibition itself?
Yes, yes, absolutely. So they're on the website, they're the interviews, and we have published the exhibition text on the website. It's everything is online, and it's in German, French, and English. And you're absolutely right. We do not differentiate anymore between an exhibition and then we do some events related. The events we do, they are part of the core of the exhibition. It's the visitor experience and engagement. It's you cannot separate them. It belongs really together. And I wanted to comment on something. I feel like I wonder how our exhibition, would have looked like in your context, because it's so different. California, you have a Jain center, you have a large community. We have, this is roughly calculating, in Switzerland about 100 Jains in total. So very small number of people. The number of migrants of Indian or South Asian origin it's limited. So we do not have these institutional structures behind or communities which are organized. It's a totally different setting. So I think it's really interesting to see how you work and how you proceeded. And I really would love to switch roles and ask you to come over to our museum and work with our collection and do something with your community from Zurich. So I think that would be a fantastic idea.
And I just wanted to follow up with a question from our audience. So an individual asked, what sparked Zurich's exhibition? What initiated it and why? So the Fowler was inspired by the Lind collection of textiles. And so what was the case in Zurich?
So when I joined the Museum Rietberg some more than 20 years ago, we have this wonderful Rishabh marble statue, which I showed you in the beginning, which is on our website very prominently presented. And this is one of our highlights in our exhibition. And I thought when I started working in the museum, one day I will do a show on Jainism. And then I came to know after a while that one of the former directors, Eberhard Fischer, has been done an exhibition in 1974 on Jain art at the Rietberg. And I discovered there was a quite important collection of Jain objects in the museum, which he had collected and donated, and I continued acquiring and collecting. So that over the years, we had a kind of really substantial amount of objects which were never presented in an exhibition, which we thought we have to do something. So there's a link, there's a story to a link to our former director, and we made a first attempt some years ago, but failed. We didn't have the right people on board, so we postponed the project. But there's a story behind, which again has to do with collections and objects, very similar to yours, donations to the museum.
Great, thank you for that. And I'm thinking about process. And so we've all discussed, one, the importance of multiple voices being present in the exhibition and in the programming, two, a close relationship and alignment between educational activities and curatorial activities, and forming those relationships that could lead to different areas of expertise coming into the exhibition. This all requires time. Time and funding to do this. So just in terms of process, are there any thoughts about that? How do we need to change in museums itself, the way we work?
May I?
Yeah.
I think, this project was the first project, and this is due to COVID, which allowed us to work with people across continents without restrictions and without traveling. And for me, this was really an amazing experience, which something I couldn't have imagined before, that you can have Zoom conferences, you talk to people and in India and California at the same time, you share documents, you watch films, you send, this kind of opportunity we never could have imagined before. And this opens completely new horizons for international collaborations. I could curate a show with Lynna Dhanani and work with Patrick. We could share. We recently had interns from Southeast Asia. They're studying at SOAS in London and working on our collections. We gave them a remote access to our database so they could work from London on our collection. These are completely new dimensions for our museum work, and I think this is absolutely fascinating and inspiring.
Mm-hmm. Also, I might add that we usually put the exhibition planning and then work on relationships and public programming. So there could be, to reverse engineer that and start
Absolutely.
with the relationship building, the public programming that could then feed the exhibition. So inverse the order, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I would say, I think for me, that is just becoming clearer and clearer, is that it's not so much that we are presenting objects from places, but we're working with objects that represent connections among people. And so that it's not, these aren't objects of the past. These are things that we're holding in common with coexistent interests and uses and needs. And I think that's an important thing for us to think about, because there's so many processes that have depersonalized objects, and both in the sense of taking away or not considering personhood of objects in and of themselves, but also just their relationship, their meaning to people. And I think projects like this, again, I think what you did, Johannes and Christopher, is just stunning, right? I love that it was clearly about people.
You know, may I, Patrick, because you know what we also share online are these films of students of Chris and others who talk about an object. And you know, some of them, they are not trained art historians, you know, but they discover and understand something and see something in these objects which they think they should share with others. And we were be able to share their excitement, and we thought that's the way to do it, to make these objects accessible and allow different interpretations and approaches, and this is, I think, was really a great idea, Chris, to work with your students in your class.
I think I'm veering off slightly from the conversation, but not fully. And I was thinking about the personhood of the object, Patrick, and I'm also thinking, you know, in the case of the chodpatas, you have really an initial reaction to an object that's not well understood. And so I wonder, and this is a question I have for everyone, is there a way in the process of maybe post-curation, but then maybe it requires a second exhibit or follow-up exhibits where the process, the experience that community and all of us have of these objects are kind of documented, right? Because I'm thinking, for example, of another member of the Jain community who said that she had a chod pata as a family heirloom that has been put away for some time. And I have the experience, I just recently returned from India, of now looking at where chodpatas are located and finding collections in Ahmedabad. And that has brought a whole new experience to what I experienced in December when I came to the museum. And so there's a kind of, there's a relationship with these objects. It's a dialogue, it's a person that's extending over time, that's increasing our awareness of their situatedness, of community situatedness, of what they mean, because meaning also changes. So I just wonder, thinking out loud, is there a way to turn that process, that cognitive process, into programmatic extension? You know, it could be collaborative where initial exhibits then are sponsored and have, you know, then spring off other exhibits based on kind of the experiential unraveling, the research that comes out of that, you know, kind of not just one exhibit and leaving it there. I do believe in Nalini Balbir's article, she talks about the 2013-2015 exhibit of textiles. There were chods. So there's some, even within like an art historical museum environment, there is this attention to textiles. Siona, who's part of this process, is very well versed in textiles. And I learned a lot from her in this process. So, you know, as we're growing, our understanding of these objects are growing, more being brought to light, we're discovering other things. So sorry, I'm going on about this, but I just wonder.
Chris, did you want to jump in, or Johannes?
Yeah, just briefly, I was thinking along the same lines as Lena earlier, and I'm glad that you said that. And one of the things I remember in graduate school, one of the first books I read was this book called Lives of Indian Images that many people read in graduate school, right? Where it basically makes the critique that these objects live as just objects that have this kind of Western gaze or whatever on them. And I got the sense that from both of these exhibitions, and one of the pictures that Lena showed, where you showed as much as you can the devotional space as it might be experienced by a Jain, right? I mean, you can't recreate the temple necessarily or the home altar in the museum, but you can to a certain degree. And I felt like part of what the exhibitions brought out of the objects, both of them, was this sense of lived religion, as you say, where the objects themselves have meaning for people. And those meanings aren't always the same, but those meanings, I think, are the most interesting thing about the objects, what they mean to the practitioners themselves.
And that animacy of the objects, and I'll turn it over to Johannes in 1 second. It also pushes us to perhaps, because objects objectify, and like also if we all acknowledge this sort of interwoven nature of personhood and objecthood, do we start thinking about the terms we use and like step back from, let's say, the term object? And Johannes, I'll turn it over to you right before we close this program today.
Yeah, thank you. I think what you mentioned, we are going to see this soon. You know, we just experimenting with a huge archive of objects and documents which we are going to put online, which will be interactive. We have a collection of African objects, and we have the archives, and we are making them online accessible and allow people to interact with these documents and add comments, to work with them, use the photographs, add descriptions. And you know, I think in a few years' time, museum websites and online collections will look very different.
Thank you.
There will much more interactive, and there will be much more voices, not only curators, but voices from communities. And I think we are in a very exciting moment where this shift of this change happens. And I'm super excited to see what's going on.
And following that excitement, I just wanted to mention the digital educational Vital Matters, which does just that. It scaffolds material expressions of belief with different interpretations representing different expertise. And we all look forward to more collaborations moving forward. I think this panel deserves a second half. And I want to thank Johannes, Chris, Lena, Patrick for their wonderful presentations and participation today. And thank you to all the audience members who stayed with us. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you
very much.
Bye.